Hi guys, welcome back to the Tech Chat. Now these are two of the very best 13-inch laptops you can buy right now. Beautifully built, the Dell XPS 13-9350 and the Macbook Pro 13 2015 are incredible. But even though they're both 13-inch flagships and two of the very best Windows and Mac experiences you can have, neither are perfect, and I do actually have a favourite, but I'll wait until the end to tell you which one. Putting them side by side though, the first thing you really notice is the XPS's Infinity Edge display. The near bezel-less screen makes the 13-inch laptop much more compact compared to the MacBook. It even fits in an 11-inch MacBook Air sleeve. It looks a lot more futuristic too. Even though we're expecting a redesigned 2016 MacBook soon, as nice and as premium as the Pro looks, we're all a bit used to it by now. I don't think they've changed the design since 2012, and it's not the most exciting. The Dell, on the other hand, always draws looks when I'm on the train or getting it out at the office, but it's not just the size that makes it a better travel laptop. It's nearly 300 grams or half a pound lighter too, which makes it easier to carry around or throw in your backpack. But while the Dell may be a bit more compact in terms of build quality, the aluminium unibody of the MacBook Pro is beautiful, and I think it looks a little bit classier than the carbon fiber effect you get on the XPS, which feels a bit plasticky and cheap in comparison. The Mac is sturdier too. There's more flex in the body if you sort of twist it a little bit, and it even creaks sometimes, although I suspect that'll be different for each model. So build quality goes to the MacBook, even though I think the Dell looks more interesting, and I really like how compact it is. In terms of specs and features though, the XPS 13 does have an advantage being newer than MacBook. It features the latest Skylake processors, whereas the Mac has the last gen Broadwell chip. The Dell also has a USB Type-C connector which can be used to power monitors, plug into display docks, and all sorts of other fancy things. So the Dell is newer, and obviously we'll have to compare it versus the upcoming 2016 MacBook Pro when it comes out in sort of late June for a fairer comparison. But for now, if you want the latest tech and features, the XPS is the clear winner. Now, while you do have an option for a Quad HD glossy touchscreen XPS 13, this, the full HD matte version, and despite actually preferring matte displays myself, it's not nearly as bright or vivid, or importantly color accurate, compared to the MacBook's 2560 by 1600 Retina glossy screen. And I wouldn't recommend the touch model of the Dell either, as even though the high resolution looks nicer, it has a big impact on battery life, and in most cases drops the battery from around 10 or 11 hours, which I get, to about 7. The MacBook does have a similarly impressive battery life though, despite having that higher resolution display. I'd get around 11 to 12 hours of light to moderate use out of the Pro, which is incredible, and a good couple of hours more than I did with last year's 2014 Haswell model. Well, in calendar years it's 2 years, but the previous model. So they both offer fantastic battery performance, but the MacBook just lasts a little bit longer, usually about an hour or so. But one of the best features of the MacBook is the touchpad, or is it the trackpad? I never know which one to call it anymore these days. But both are glass and nice to use, but the MacBook's is a fair bit bigger and a bit more responsive running on Mac OS. The Dell certainly isn't bad by any means, but it's just a little bit more fiddly and not consistently as nice to use. As for keyboards though, which has the best typing experience, I think they're pretty much on par. Both are backlit, chiclet style keyboards, and both are excellent. But if I had to give a winner, I think the MacBook's is just a bit better. The Dell keys feel just a little bit spongy in comparison. Now let's talk about performance, which is faster. Well, unfortunately, I can't really compare these like for like as they have different specs. The Dell has an i5 6200U Skylake processor with 8GB of RAM, whereas the MacBook is running a more powerful but older i7 557U Broadwell chip, along with 16GB of RAM. So even though it's a bit older, the MacBook Pro, on paper at least, should be more powerful. So I won't spend long comparing their spec, since as well as having a different spec, the Windows versus Mac debate deserves an entire video to itself. But I did do a couple of quick tests though. First of all, I found the MacBook a little faster at loading web pages compared to the Dell on both Chrome and Safari. But since I edit and export videos pretty much every day for a living, I figured I'd do a quick Premiere Pro test. The MacBook was about a second quicker opening the program, but then, despite having a slower i5 and half the RAM, the XPS 13 was actually a couple of minutes quicker, around 15% faster at exporting a full HD video compared to the MacBook. And as well as being slower, the MacBook got very, very loud and very hot with its fans whirring away, whereas the XPS barely made a sound. It was cool throughout, but definitely not what I was expecting. But importantly, while it may be a little bit slower exporting videos, the MacBook doesn't crash nearly as much as the XPS does. Neither of these laptops are meant to edit 4K video, that's fair enough, but if I do drag a couple of 4K video files into Premiere Pro, the MacBook takes a few seconds and then is fully usable. The XPS, on the other hand, crashes and eventually just blue screens of death. This happens every time, and actually not just with 4K video. One of the reasons I've bought this MacBook is because the Dell just gives me grief when I'm editing videos. I made sure I had the latest updates, I reinstalled Premiere Pro, the Adobe Suite, and even did a full Windows 10 reinstall. But despite all that, every now and then, maybe once or twice a day, it will crash while I'm editing video. And it's not the most complex video. I'm not a professional cinematographer or anything, but I do just put YouTube videos and things like that together. But I'm happy to wait a couple of extra minutes during the export process if it means I don't have to deal with crashes nearly as often. So you may not edit videos or even have this problem, but I thought I'd mention it anyway, since it's something that really annoyed me about the XPS 13. And it's not like it happens all the time either, so I can just put it down to a specific software issue, or maybe the hardware isn't good enough. Again though, I think the reality here is just macOS is just a bit more stable, even compared to Windows 10. Microsoft's OS is better than ever, and in many ways superior to macOS, but for consistent stability and reliability, I think Apple comes out on top. And another area where the MacBook shines is in speaker quality. Just listen to this.
Hey Red, how are you?
Oh, I'm horrible.
Hey Red, how are you?
Oh, I'm horrible.
Red, there seems to be a recurring issue here. Mr. Red, there seems to be a recurring issue here.
There's a big difference between the two. The Dell sounds weak and tinny in comparison. So the big question, which is better? Well, as I said at the beginning, I do have a favorite, and as much as I wish it could be the Dell, I think I'll be keeping the MacBook Pro. For me, it comes down to the bigger and more responsive trackpad, being able to edit video reliably, even in 4K, which is impressive, and finally the screen. Despite preferring matte displays, the MacBook Pro's is a lot brighter, it's more vivid and more color accurate. It's just nicer to look at, and the slightly taller 16:10 aspect ratio makes working and web browsing easier as well. But it's not perfect. The downsides of the Mac versus the XPS is it gets a lot hotter and louder when running intensive apps. It's a fair bit bulkier in size as well, and I really do like Windows 10. It is better in a lot of ways, even though it keeps going to sleep on me, but especially if you want to play games. As for price, there is a pretty big difference between them. In their current spec, which isn't equivalent, the Dell's about £850 and the MacBook is about £1,600, a lot more. But if you were to match the specs, the MacBook would come to about £1,200, which is still a fair bit more expensive than the Dell. Still though, despite the extra cost and really liking Windows 10, for me, the MacBook just about wins. But they are both excellent and you really can't go wrong with either if you're in the market for a new laptop. But let me know what you think in the comments below. Do you prefer the Dell XPS or the MacBook Pro? And do stay tuned and subscribe to the Tech Chap for you MacBook fans, as I will be I will be getting my hands on and reviewing the latest upcoming 2016 MacBook Pro as soon as I can as well. Thank you very much for watching, guys, and if you do enjoy my videos, please do like, share and subscribe, and I'll see you again right here on the Tech Chat.